trailer for this game, we see a brief interaction between Rosen and Sephiroth, meaning that this story is not done yet. Problem is, I have less than 2 months to finish this series, so when the next chapter, The First Soldier, comes out, I'll cover it then.
I'm back, bitches!
I've been waiting a long time to discuss the rest of The First Soldier. So long, in fact, that if you look at my time spent on Ever Crisis to make sure I wouldn't have to worry about being too weak to complete the rest of the story, I may have gone overboard. But at the very least, I haven't spent a dime. With that being said, I did cover a little of the following chapters of The First Soldier in my Sephiroth theory video, but didn't get the chance to go as in depth as I wanted to. And considering the ending of Chapter 1 as well as the content within Chapter 2, I feel like it's going to be important to know as we wait patiently for Remake Part 3's release. What needs to be covered is the ending of Chapter 1, which caps off the Rador Archipelago mission, and Chapter 2, which goes over Angeal's first meeting with Sephiroth that involves exploring a different area of Wutai which holds Sephiroth's iconic and mysterious weapon, Masamune. We also have to go over what happened to Team Glenn after the Rador Archipelago, which then explains their involvement with Wutai and the creation of the Inter-Rim government. So yeah, a large amount of shit. I doubt this is the end of The First Soldier, but I didn't want to wait for another chapter that may not come anytime soon. My upload schedule is already depressing as it is, so without further ado, let's kick this video off right.
やれもたもたしてるとみんな死ぬぞ助けたいのは僕じゃないだろ決めろ生き延びてほしいのは誰だ
The surveying of the Rador Archipelago was a success. It only cost an entire tribe of people. 10 days have passed until Shinra reinforcements finally arrive and begin their digging. Around this time, Sephiroth has been examining old bodies of the slain Radoran people, as if Sephiroth wasn't weird enough. Team Glenn asks why he's defiling the dead, where he explains that the necklace of his mother is missing, most likely fallen somewhere in the ruins during the battle with the Radorans. While they did not find it, they do have a moment of respect for their fallen foes. They realize that the Radorans saw that the convenient life that Shinra wanted to impose was not worth the cost of mana that would be consumed. Penitology holds very similar ideals to what the Radorans believe. Mana, or Mako, is a resource that enriches the wildlife, the land, and the people. To use it as a resource was just wrong. And as the Mako would be burned away, so too would the memories, hopes, and dreams of the Radoran people, to the point that they won't even be remembered. And to be fair, that's exactly what happens. As a way of apology, Team Glenn and Sephiroth bury the rest of the Radoran people that weren't already eaten by fiends and monsters. During which, the excavation dig hit something they weren't supposed to, which leads to a chain reaction also known as a mana torrent, meaning this island was about to get a lot smaller as it will begin to break and fall into the ocean. Orders are to evacuate immediately, but Glenn can't shake off his guilt and wants to save Rosen, who is still at the chimney stack on a different island. So by punching out the chief engineer and hijacking his helicopter, Team Glenn has officially gone rogue. Sephiroth was about to leave with the other Shinra employees, but decided to go with Glenn and the others. What are they gonna do? Fire him? The team manages to meet up with Rosen and awkwardly explain that his entire family and race fell ill to a bad case of murder. Rosen doesn't take it too well and runs away. Sephiroth offers to catch up with Rosen because he is faster and may have a better chance of talking to Rosen, considering he doesn't want to talk to Glenn. Upon meeting up, Sephiroth's pleas for Rosen to come with them fell on deaf ears. Rosen points out that Sephiroth doesn't want to save him. Sephiroth wants to save Glenn and the others. Over the past 10 days on the island, Sephiroth became very close with Glenn, Matt, and Lucia. They were the first to see him as a person and not as a walking, talking, killing science experiment. Sephiroth had hoped that he could finally have people he could call friends, so he knows that they won't leave without Rosen, but Rosen doesn't want to leave his island. There is nothing for him in their world, so Sephiroth makes the difficult decision to kill Rosen at Rosen's request. Glenn was furious, and during his yelling, Sephiroth's necklace is carried to land by the life stream. So, in anger, Glenn kicks the necklace back into the ravine. Sephiroth doesn't deserve happiness! The team leave with Refu the dog as the Redor archipelago is torn apart by the life stream and collapses into itself. Upon arrival at Shinra HQ, Sephiroth is greeted with commendation from the president and a promotion, despite the excavation failure and the insubordination Sephiroth took part in. But it seems Sephiroth was able to explain to Team Glenn why he killed Rosen along the way, because Team Glenn is still very supportive of Sephiroth and willing to take the heat off of him. While Sephiroth hoped to continue working with Team Glenn for future missions, that hope died like 10 seconds after saying it. A commanding officer breaks up the promotion celebration and informs Team Glenn that their punishment for insubordination would soon be decided by tribunal. Until then, they will be detained, leaving Refu in Sephiroth's care. After 7 days, Refu was on the verge of death from starvation. Sephiroth fed him, don't get it twisted, but you know how dogs are when their masters are gone for too long. He just refused to eat. But on the 8th day, Refu was gone, and Team Glenn had officially deserted.
俺たちは育った世界が違う。理解できる日は永遠になさそうだ。
Sephiroth was now all alone again. After Glenn and the others left, he began suppressing his emotions again. By letting go of his attachment to the ones he considered friends, he found his scores during training had improved, meaning the power of friendship is stupid. In September of 1992, 4 soldier operatives went missing on a surveying mission in Robio, the most southern tip of Wutai. Sephiroth is dispatched alongside Soldier 2nd Class Angel Eupholie. And yes, even at this age, he still avoided using the Buster Sword. While these two would eventually be very good friends, their first mission together was strained, to say the least. Because of what happened in Redor, Sephiroth was deemed unfit to lead, so he was passed up for Angel. Angel does his best, but Sephiroth is being the definition of a spoiled brat. Alongside them is a man named Russ Bachman of Shinra's Records and Archives Division. He's in charge of capturing footage of Sephiroth and Angel exploring the area and kicking ass. The last known location of the 4 missing operatives was in the Aibara Forbidden Zone. It was a place that fell victim to a dark tragedy that every Wutaian is told to never speak of and never step foot in the area. They find the bodies of 3 of the soldiers, Marco Morse, Ed Shooter, and Radam Fawn. All the while, Sephiroth and Angel just cannot get on the same page. Sephiroth is guarding his heart and keeping Angel at a distance, finding strength in relying on himself and himself alone. But Angel is still reaching out and trying to establish any connection with Sephiroth as possible, whether it be friends, colleagues, acquaintances, teammates, whatever. Particularly because working together ensures safety, efficiency, and retention of one's humanity. After finding the last injured soldier, they get ambushed by an old man with a sword that Sephiroth can't keep his eyes off of, the Masamune. Sephiroth goes in for the killing blow, only for his Shinra-engineered sword to be cut in half by the Masamune. From that moment forward, Sephiroth was smitten.
Gimme. Gimme, 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 gimme!
The old man, while having Sephiroth's broken sword still embedded into his abdomen, states that he is the master blacksmith Masamune and the blade was crafted by him. No one worthy has yet to claim it from him, but it must be passed down soon. So yeah, an open invitation for Sephiroth. When the team goes to pick up the injured soldier, she removes her helmet and looks identical to Lucrezia Crescent, Sephiroth's mother. She states her name is Alyssa Goldie, and here is where shit gets freaky. Throughout this journey in Robio, Angel and Sephiroth begin getting visions. Sephiroth's visions consist of the life he's always wanted. He's made peace with being Shinra property as it is the only life he's known. But in these visions, Lucrezia is with him, being the mother that she probably would have been, making Sephiroth his favorite food, pumpkin soup, going out on picnics, and even stopping his rigorous training sessions, which likely no one has ever done for Sephiroth. Of course, she is labeled as Genova, considering that is how Sephiroth knows her as. Angel, on the other hand, has visions of his upbringing, the times he spent with his mother Jillian and his father in Benora. But while Sephiroth's visions are comforting, Angel's visions start off as they most likely happened, but will turn to versions that play on his guilt and shame for leaving his family. He left Benora to become a soldier, which would give him a lot of money that he could send back to his family and village, as the Buster Sword was made for Angel to use as a soldier if he did manage to make it in. The creation of it cost his father a lot of money. Paying off the debt for it caused his father to be overworked to the point where it killed him. But when Angel first received it, his father told him to embrace his dreams and hold on to his hope. The sword became a symbol of his father's values and would be the only tangible thing that would keep Angel anchored anchored in what was about to be a journey filled with ghosts and illusions.
セフィロスがあの刀を手にすれば世界が変わる気がするもの。
世界が変わる
So, the dead soldiers were taken to evacuation, but Alyssa still wants to explore Robio, which Sephiroth agrees wholeheartedly. Between the sword and the woman who looks like his mother, it's almost like something is coercing Sephiroth to stay. After replenishing equipment, the team heads north. Along the way, Alyssa began getting visions of the past and reciting the history of the island, which means it's time for some lore. Oh yeah, I live for this shit! 2 centuries ago, before they were wiped out, the Cetrans arrived to tame this land, which they now called Aigara. Before a century had passed, the land became a lush, fertile grassland. Shortly after, a beast arrived and destroyed everything in its path. The fiend was never given a name. While I did think that it may have been Jenova, this battle takes place almost 1,000 years after Jenova's arrival. Also, Jenova stayed in the northern continent, so it just doesn't add up. And only a handful of great soldiers, the 5 swords of Aigara, stood to defend against this unnamed fiend. Balte, Mohan, Gakurin, Leido, and Dachau. They had let loose a huge burst of magical fire to defeat the beast. The problem was that the magic was so hot and so powerful, it spread and burned the southern point of the island to a crisp. The fires burned for 3 years straight. While Balte was a drinker who spent half of his life in jail, he was strong with a lot of potential. Dachau recruited him for the fight with the fiend, where he would use his massive body as a shield, and died at the age of 34 after protecting his allies. Mohan was the youngest and only woman of the 5. Fast and light of foot, she functioned as the messenger for Dachau. She died at the age of 17. Gakurin was the eldest and was the only one capable of performing magic via a pterodama in his mouth. A pterodama is what is known now as materia. He was the cause for the blazing inferno that took the island. It was a last-ditch effort as he had received a fatal blow. While it did win the day, he died not knowing the damage he had caused at the age of 62. Man straight up said, "I'll sacrifice all my death saves if I can cast Fireball at 9th level once before I die." Leido was the nephew of Dachau, and had even surpassed his uncle in swordsmanship. While the beast and the land caught fire, Leido stayed to fight, giving no regard to the flames, and struck the beast until it died. In his final moments, he appeared clad in burning armor, still protecting his uncle, heading toward Aigara until he died. He was only 25. Dachau was the only survivor. He managed to reach Aigara before the flames arrived, and despite having some burns, still successfully evacuated the town and headed north. There, he and the other survivors built the nation of Wutai. Dachau died at the ripe age of 100. Now, 500 years before the events of this chapter, new Cetrans arrived to try and settle in the lands where the fires took place, meaning that they weren't at the verge of extinction at this point, but still smaller in numbers. Still retaining Cetran knowledge on how to cultivate the land, they managed to bring the area back to life, naming their new home Robio. When it came to the tools and weapons of the village, it was all done by a single man, Masamune. But this land houses spirits. One day, the spirits commanded Masamune to forge a blade unlike any other. He poured his body and soul to create the blade. Upon seeing it, some of the villagers wanted the blade for themselves, going so far as to try and steal or attack Masamune for it. He defended himself and the blade, which led to him massacring the entire village in fire and blood.
I feel like we've been here before. Have we been here before?
Upon hearing what happened to the village, Wutai set up stones around the destroyed village to create a spirit barrier. 5 statues were built in the 5 swords of Aigara's name at the nearby temple. It was how they were able to detain Masamune's essence even further, preventing any spirit from getting out, and labeled Robio a forbidden zone. For the next 500 years, Masamune waited for the warrior that the spirits claimed the sword was for, Sephiroth. Which brings us back to now. On their exploration, both Alyssa and Buckman are given information of the town's history through visions. Continuing onward, they follow the sound of a bell to a temple. By defeating the monsters held within the statue of the 5 swords, they are granted access to Masamune's statue. All the while, Sephiroth and Angeal are fighting visions, coercing them to continue towards the sword. But Angeal was the only one to resist these awful visions because he knows his parents that the visions used to twist his mind. They would never do or say the awful things that plagues Angeal's heart. Thanks to the Buster Sword, Angeal retains his own will, which leads to interactions that mirror something out of a horror movie, with everyone saying, "It's cool!" cool and that they should keep exploring, while Angeal is the only one talking sense. But nothing will stop Sephiroth from gaining Masamune, not even a punch from Angeal. Sephiroth responded by knocking Angeal out. Not too important, I just find this hilarious as well as interesting, considering how friendly they are as adults. After making it to Masamune, Sephiroth beats him in combat, but the sword is still out of Sephiroth's reach. Sephiroth still feels a huge guilt for killing Rosen and losing his only friends. The choice to kill Rosen, while justified, plagues every decision he makes. The spirits then take the form of Glenn Lodbrok, telling Sephiroth that they need to go and save Rosen, and then runs on ahead. The spirits keep causing him to doubt himself, but Jenova is using her influence on Sephiroth to be a pillar of support, which I feel makes his descent into madness later in his life even more justified. He'd been lied to his entire life, but perhaps since his time in Robio, Sephiroth began truly feeling his mother's influence, making Jenova a comfort throughout his life. So rejecting his humanity and following in the one entity that showed him compassion and understanding at his lowest point made the most sense to him. But I'm getting off track. Back in Robio, Sephiroth has now reached another trial, a choice between saving Matt or saving Lucia. Regardless of the choice, he has to fight a blighted spirit. Upon its defeat, it leaves him with the advice that he shouldn't be unsure of himself. Normal people can, but Sephiroth can't. He can't afford to be held back by the past. He must accept that it has made him what he is. Let the past moments of his friends go and fights for the future. And Sephiroth says something I didn't pick up on the first time. Sephiroth states, "My memories with them are precious." Very interesting how he says this, but would eventually discard these memories at the end of his life. Continuing onward, by following the voice of the illusions posing as Glenn Lodbrok, the voice leads them to the destroyed Igara Sei Palace, which the spirits will then make it look like what it used to before the Great Fire. At the end of their exploration, Sephiroth is presented with a similar choice to Matt and Lucia, but this time with Rosen and Glenn. Regardless of the choice, Sephiroth and Angeal face another blighted spirit, and upon its defeat, the spirits deem Sephiroth worthy of the Masamune. The spirits state that the whispers of the blade will guide and free him from the pain of difficult decisions, most likely the decision between dismemberment or impalement. He returns to the Masamune statue, where the spirits of Robio combine together to form the blade of terrifying destruction. Upon leaving, the crew is taken to the Scarlet Pavilion of Igara, which resembles how it looked in its heyday. As they navigate through, the spirits and Alyssa and Bachman glaze Sephiroth and his acquisition of the sword, hailing him as a hero, worshipping him, all as a means for him to lower his guard. As they attempt to leave, the blighted spirit grabs Alyssa and Angeal. His past choices were trials, but now he must make an actual choice and live with the consequences. But Angeal wasn't having that shit, so he broke free. Here, Alyssa confesses that by the time Angeal and Sephiroth found her, the spirits had already changed her. She pleads with Sephiroth to kill her as she doesn't want to become a monster like Masamune and the rest of the spirits, but it was too late. As Alyssa's monster form attacks, Sephiroth begins to falter. Even the sword turned on him, but Angeal uses the Buster Sword for the first time in combat to protect Sephiroth. Angeal tells Sephiroth that while he may be a cyborg, a ruthless killing machine, and a false hero, even someone like him has friends. Sephiroth apologizes for how he acted towards Angeal, and the two work together to put Alyssa to rest. With the day won, the team set out. Sephiroth asks Angeal to keep the origins of Masamune a secret, as the higher-ups at Shinra would want to experiment on it. Bachman will later find out that nothing in the footage he captured will be seen to anyone. But on their way home, they look through the footage, and it's here that Sephiroth is further bewildered, as the footage shows that Alyssa actually looked nothing like Lucrezia. We know, of course, that it was just Genova's influence. At the end of the First Soldier Chapter 2, it fast forwards to Bachman's return to Robio, this time as a black-robed figure carrying his old camera. He spouts that he has a theory behind that whole mission, that the spirits and the will of the sword was all Genova's doing, all leading to reunion. And I still don't know how I feel about it. In my personal opinion, it sometimes feels like Jenova and her manipulation takes a lot of agency away from character choice and circumstance, making her the quintessential cop-out. But that's a whole can of worms to go into. Maybe I'll make a video about my problems with Jenova in the future. You should like, comment, and subscribe if you want that. Or better yet, just do it anyway.
You Shinras, You take and you take, and you never give back. Left to you, this world would end up an empty husk.
So what happened to our favorite P0 soldiers? Well, Glenn, Matt, and Lucia are 110% done with Shinra. The problem is, Shinra has eyes everywhere. Minus Wutai and a couple of select places, Shinra has a hand in everything, everywhere. So they decide to create a society free of Shinra's influence. For a while, they do really well as more and more people are joining the little village they built. But in 1995, they gained enough notoriety to get the attention of Rufus Shinra. The war with Wutai has been going on for about 10 years at this point. So Rufus sees this as the time to begin planting seeds for his hostile takeover of Shinra. Since Team Glenn has reason to despise Shinra as well, he feels an alliance may be profitable. Team Glenn, thanks to Glenn's gut feeling, doesn't trust Rufus. Naturally, he wants nothing to do with Shinra and declines. Rufus makes a point that he may regret that. Shortly after that meeting, someone in the village they built was a traitor with connections to Shinra, leading to their entire village being burned down. Knowing that Shinra will always be hunting them, or at the very least make their lives worse, Glenn, Matt, and Lucia form the Shinra Resistance Committee. After some small successes, Rufus tracks them down again and re-offers his alliance. As a show of good faith, he offers a joint operation trial run. They took Rufus up on the offer and attempted to hijack a convoy. While looking simple enough considering there weren't many reinforcements, they abandoned the plan as they discovered the reason for such little security. It was because Sephiroth was brought in to escort the convoy. This was not a mere coincidence. Rufus set the team to fail as a way of showing that he holds all the cards. They even pieced together that Rufus was responsible for the destruction of their village. Glenn realizes that while they stand no chance against Shinra or Rufus, at least Rufus has full intention of getting rid of his father. An enemy of my enemy is my friend alliance is then formed. Rufus will provide mission, info, and resources while Team Glenn will execute it under the umbrella of the Shinra Resistance Committee, or SRC. In 1999, the SRC set up their HQ in Wutai. Considering the war was still going on, they needed a place where anti-Shinra sentiment was the norm. Their goal was to defeat Shinra's frontline forces. By doing so, the Wuchang faction of Wutai would look weak for their inaction, allowing the SRC to be accepted over the useless Wuchang. From there, introduce Vice Roy Saruf as the leader with Glenn as the face of the committee. I am 99% sure Saruf is simply a fake figurehead, but Remake Part 3 can still prove me wrong. The SRC win the battle and are accepted into Wutai fully. And now we spring forward to the beginnings of the Crisis Saga as the mass desertion in Soldier has occurred. October of 2000, Sephiroth attempts to contact his deserted friend Genesis, and Glenn attacks Sephiroth. Before the fight can begin, Refu appears and calms the fight down. From there, Glenn warns Sephiroth that an air raid will commence soon to deal with the deserted soldiers. So if Sephiroth wants to save them, he has to go warn them. Before leaving, he apologizes for Sephiroth's necklace. Sephiroth then begins fighting battle after battle to save Shinra troopers from fiends, a behemoth, and the raid. After which, Shinra pushes back the Wutai resistance forces. But this was to be expected. So the SRC used this loss as a means to commit a coup in Wutai and establish a provincial government with Saruf as the leader. After Shinra is no more, the people will decide what kind of government they want. Over the next 7 years, while Avalanche was being the giant thorn in Shinra's side, the SRC worked in secret and did some smaller sabotages here and there. One day, SRC were tasked with destroying the Shinra facility located off the coast of Junon called Arsenal Island. The operation was small but important. Meanwhile, Rufus has just gotten the Turks in his back pocket after the events of Before Crisis. Furthermore, he plays both sides as he sells out Glenn and his team to his father, as a means to take suspicion off his back and gain his father's favor. Glenn was able to deduce that the ambush was going to happen before the mission started by the wording Rufus used, but it was more of his gut feeling. The plan was for the SRC to be seen as defeated. Rufus then gets closer with his father, and then the SRC will work with Rufus and the Turks to take Shinra down in one fell swoop, using the guise of the end of the Wutai ceasefire, a war between Shinra and the SRC that the president agreed to. After defeating a rampaging behemoth, Arsenal Island is beginning to sink, but Rufus has arranged transport for Team Glenn. Matt and Lucia take one, while Glenn catches a ride with Rufus. The two needed to discuss stipulations for the new war, but then Rufus got a call. After answering, he is given news on the one thing he's wanted all these years: the death of his father. Rufus is now the president and takes Glenn down to the outskirts of Midgar to celebrate. The revolution is on the rise, which means Glenn is no longer needed. Before Glenn completely returns to the life stream, he hears a voice, encouraging him to keep fighting. With nothing left to lose, he states that he'll do whatever he has to get things done. So that's why Rufus was so shocked to see Glenn again in Rebirth. I mean, he had killed him like 3 or 4 days ago.
You're supposed to be dead! Am I not?
As of November of 2025, we have received no more episodes or chapters of The First Soldier. But it wouldn't surprise me if another episode releases in 2026 where we learned about how Genesis joined the friend group of Sephiroth and Angeal, or some other escapades of Team Glenn between the years of 2000 and 2007, in which this series will return for another half-parter, even though this video is just as long as my other ones. Why do I do this to myself? Regardless, thank you all for watching, and I hope you found it informative. Be sure to like the video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe if you feel I've earned it. This is Gray Supernova signing off, saying Rufus straight up gave Glenn backshots.